Is this outbreak really happening? That's what I have to ask myself when I look at a story like this. A story that comes on the heels of a man that died last week of the bird flu in Vietnam. A story that comes on the heels of multiple stories of thousands of sea lions dying in South America from the bird flu. And now we have a story out of AP News. Dairy cattle in Texas and in Kansas are now testing positive for the bird flu. The reason why I have to ask myself, is this truly real? Is because I remember reporting on the avian bird flu a couple of years ago. Millions of chickens in our country were killed, were culled. I do understand how farmers and ranchers do have insurance for things like this. They get paid top dollar in situations where their livestock is killed, but also, and I'm not blaming them for that because that's just smart business. It's hedging against catastrophe. What I'm afraid of is the government that comes out and offers money to ranchers to do this. The Dust Bowl was a very interesting time in our country's history. Dust Bowl was created by our government. Our government wanted there to be food shortages in order to control the people, but also, in my opinion, allow a few companies that had their hands in the government, ties to the government, their companies to get larger and larger. We are seeing an attack on small farmers. We are seeing an attack on gardeners, people that want to just grow their own food. And I believe that we are in very serious times. I wish that I could just turn on the record button and say, everybody go and start a garden, whether it be a container garden on your porch of your apartment or a big size garden. Start to sell those fruits, because the government has made it nearly impossible to grow your own food and sell food. Everything from GMO foods to what's being sprayed in the atmosphere. I believe there's a constant attack on our food supply. And I wish I could just hit a record button and everybody in the country listen and go, okay, we're going to do this. And it becomes so powerful that the government can't overthrow it, because they'd be going after everyone. That's what the government fears the most. This story, again, is out of AP, and it's entitled Dairy Cattle in Texas and Kansas Test Positive for Bird Flu. And you'll see in a second, as I read some very key lines that will strike fear into people, why I believe these stories are very important. And I believe it's very important to have a food supply, an emergency food supply. 3 months, 6 months, I think is very smart, because I think that we are one attack away in our country from people really truly needing that to be able to weather some very hard times. Between that and a water filter, I think you're very prudent to do that. But then at a certain point, you stop and you go, look, I'm going to set aside 3 months or 6 months and I'm done. I'm not going to be the prepper that goes nuts to where I live in a bunker and I'm, see, we have to occupy the land and take the land and have ownership of the land. We can't do that by hiding in a bunker somewhere. We can't enact change in our country without helping other people. And if we're too busy always helping ourselves, we truly won't be fruitful. This story it starts by saying milk from dairy cows in Texas and Kansas has tested positive for bird flu, U.S. officials said on Monday. Officials with the Texas Animal Health Commission confirmed the flu virus is the type A H5N1 strain known for decades to cause outbreaks in birds and occasionally infect people. The virus is affecting older dairy cows in those states and in New Mexico, causing decreased lactation and low appetite. It comes a week after officials in Minnesota announced that goats on a farm there had been an outbreak of bird flu among poultry where diagnosed with the virus. It's believed to be the first time bird flu, also known as highly pathogenic avian influenza, was found in U.S. livestock. The commercial milk supply is safe and risk to people is low, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And it seems like these stories always seem like that. And all of a sudden you see another one pop up and another one. It was like that a couple of years ago with the avian bird flu. The price of chicken went up. We saw chicken farmers close their doors and go out of business because they'd lost everything, or there was increased regulations. And it seems like it's always these big conglomerates that just get bigger and bigger. And it seems to be the smaller ranchers or farmers that get affected by and large. Now it says dairies are required to only allow milk from healthy animals to enter the food supply, and the milk from the sick animals is being diverted or destroyed. Pasteurization also kills viruses and other bacteria, and the process is required for milk sold throughout the interstate commerce, the agency said. Now imagine you've got, 2,000 head of cattle, dairy cattle, milking, and you've got a couple of them where that tainted milk is now in the system, and you're talking truckloads, multiple truckloads being thrown out. Says at this stage, there's no concern about the safety of the commercial milk supply or that this circumstances poses a risk to consumer health, the USDA said in a statement. The federal government said its tests in the cattle did not detect any changes to the virus that would make it spread more easily to people. Dairy farmers in Texas first became concerned 3 weeks ago when the cattle started falling ill with what officials called mystery dairy cow disease. Texas Department of Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller said milk production fell sharply and the cows were lethargic and weren't eating much. We hadn't seen anything like it before, he said. It's kind of like that they had a cold. The state's Animal Health Commission began an investigation that includes tests for bird flu. Spokeswoman Erin Robinson said, based on findings from Texas USDA officials, think the cows got the virus from infected wild birds. Experts say livestock appear to recover on their own within 7 to 10 days. That's different than bird flu outbreaks in poultry, which necessitates killing flocks to get rid of the virus. Since 2022, outbreaks have led to the loss of about 80 million birds in the U.S. commercial flocks. I remember reporting on that multiple times, and it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Interesting that we're seeing bird flu now within a handful of weeks affecting cattle and affecting goats. This doesn't look like anything. It doesn't look anything like the high path influenza in bird flocks. This came from Michael Payne, a food and animal veterinarian and the biosecurity expert within the University of California, Davis. Officials called it a rapidly evolving situation. The Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are involved, along with officials in 3 states. Another dairy-heavy state, Iowa, said it is monitoring the situation. Dairy industry officials said that producers have started enhanced biosecurity efforts on U.S. farms, including limiting the amount of traffic in and out of properties and restricting visits to employees and essential personnel. This kind of actions on the part of the government always make me very concerned. The bird flu is not abnormal. It's not new. And one thing we did not have 50 years ago, 100 years ago, was this much government oversight. And it's very interesting to me because every time the government gets more of their hands gripped and clawed into an industry, I believe it is getting very dangerous. I'm going to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, when I was working as a firefighter, we had a fire breakout not in my immediate response area, about an hour away, but it was a large structure fire. Structure fires of that size would normally get a response from my area. We would send an engine or at least a water tender. We got the call, and it was a Taylor Farms facility burning down. Went to my chief and I said, why aren't we going to this? And he didn't really think much of it. I'm like, that's a large structure. I went up to my room and I started Googling the size of the fire and looking at the updates, listening to the radio, traffic. And as I'm looking at it, other stories start popping up in the news. Some news outlets were covering it live. It was one of the largest Taylor Farms packing facilities in the country. Then I started seeing multiple other places, food processing facilities that had burnt to the ground. I started covering them on this channel, and it was like mouth dropping how these fires were happening, and all the fire reports were coming back to it doesn't make sense. It didn't. The Taylor Farms fire, the way it grew, did not make sense to me. Being a career firefighter for 23, 24 years at that point, didn't make sense the way it moved. Same with all these other fires. I believe there is actually a coordinated attack on our food supply, coming different directions, taking out key infrastructure points, making the cost of food go up, hurting the supply chain of food. We are in a moment where we're seeing hauling companies, shipping companies going bankrupt left and right all over our country, right? We are seeing increased regulations. Matter of fact, in Oregon, there's a story right now where they're wanting to. It's essentially taking the water away. They're attacking small farms, small ranchers. If we don't get this information out and people aren't getting ready for this or starting to identify this, there's something happening here and it doesn't seem right, like in my gut. Let me ask you this, by just a poll right now of everybody that's watching. Type 1 if you think that there's something nefarious going on behind the scenes, like a chronic attack, very small little attacks at multiple points in our food supply system. Type 1 if you agree with that. Type 2 if you think that's not true. And you start, because everyone that's watching this video, every single one of you, have different backgrounds in life. We're all different, right? However, we all sort of understand that there are things that happen behind the scenes. I remember as a firefighter getting a call from somebody that we all, honestly, at the time, this happened in 1999, thought was crazy. Calling from the mountains, screaming, yelling that they were spraying us with chemicals in the sky. And I remember that call and all the guys laughing it off. We now know this to be completely true because the government straight up came out and said, yes, we're spraying out a substance, it's spun aluminum and bromine, and into the sky to shield you from the harmful rays of the sun. Like, that's actually poisonous, what you're doing. And it only happens in high populated areas. We've seen that's now just come out. It came out. And as a matter of fact, type 3 if you know what I'm talking about. This group of young individuals went to a scientific convention. And they were recording hidden recordings where the scientists were openly talking about. These were the scientists that did it, right? And then they started interviewing. The scientists were like, hey, who are you guys? And that video, you can't really find it on the internet. They've, like, all the big social media outlets have taken it down. But after that, that's when the government came out and said, okay, yeah, pretty much you got us. We're doing it, but we're doing it for your benefit. Like, what? How many of you, type 4, if you have the sensation of your skin burning from the sun these days, like something like almost, and I feel it, and I don't care if people think I'm crazy or not. It's like holding one of those mirrors up, those people that were too into tanning, and they would put those mirrors up and you'd feel that intense rays of the sun. It seems like the sun is actually burning our skin these days, on certain days, on specific days, not all the time. There's a passage in the Bible. It says in the end days, the sun's going to burn us. How many of you understand that? See, I don't want to be an alarmist, but I don't know of a whole lot of conspiracy theories that haven't come true now, that we all know to be true. And that's why I think it's so important to be vigilant and prepared, because the catastrophic collapse of finance that's about to happen is going to happen on multiple fronts, and people are about to be so confused. And the one thing that I don't want to see is you lose your peace of mind and lose your goals, because that's what very wealthy groups of people want you to do. They want you scattered and running around like sheeple and not organized. Any government knows that if you want to take control of the people, you get people afraid, get them in fear of something, and then get them scattered. And we're seeing that right now all over the place. Type 6 if you believe that's actually what they want to do with baiting race wars and things like that. I mean, I know people from every uh, ethnic group in the world right now in America that is saying, we know what they're doing. They're getting it. Everyone's waking up. But it's hard for them to stay in control if people are getting it. I want to thank everybody that's been smashing that bell icon and smashing the thumbs up and showing the algo where to shove it, because you've probably noticed this channel is starting to take off again. And I'm very grateful to all of you, because I want to warn people, but different than others. I'm not an alarmist. I'm a realist. Like, this is really happening. Get ready for what's coming, and then take advantage of this. This is going to be our finest hour. That's the true message of all of this. Yeah, go get some emergency food because the government's not here to help you. Yeah, go and get some start buying gold and silver and some Bitcoin and pay off debt and prepare for an economic collapse. Not because you're here to just get through it. I want you to crush it. Become wealthier than you ever have. We need the money going from the weak hands to the poor hand. I mean, to the strong hands, the good-hearted people. Because when good-hearted, smooth, clear-minded people have wealth, what do they do with that wealth? They treat it properly. They take care of other people. We are seeing a day and age where people like Bill Gates can actively say on a TED Talks, and they leave that up for everybody to hear. There's a reason for that. If we get vaccines right, we can eliminate 25% of the population. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't a foobar. That was very well scripted and meant to say things. However, there are people on social media that get held back because they tell their opinions. That was Bill Gates' opinion, right? Who believes, type 10 if you believe Bill Gates has evil intent. I'm just curious. Type 11 if you don't think so. There are people that think Klaus Schwab. I was listening to a up-and-coming YouTuber, up-and-coming, he's crushing it, because he's one of the elite class. He's one of the wealthiest people in the country. And he was talking about how people really get Klaus Schwab wrong. Right then, I'm like, I'm never watching this guy again. It's Tom Bilyeu. Never watching this guy again. He goes, he just gets it wrong. I'm like, I've seen that dude in his satanic ritual garb, all dressed up, and he's telling you by a certain date, you're going to own nothing and be happy, while he's jet setting around in a private jet. This is not a joke, but that's the whole message behind. And I could tell that the algorithm just picked something up and didn't like it, because all messages had frozen at a certain time point and nobody else was allowed back onto the stream. You get to know this kind of stuff after a certain amount of time, and you start to realize how big of a deal it is that AI is listening to everything you say, and it's going to go, you know what? We're not going to share you anymore. The view count is pretty much frozen. It just went up by 2 when it's just adding. These things are really happening behind the scenes. I thank you so much for your support. It's the reason why somebody came alongside to me to help me and start this newsletter, because we are getting thousands of people emailing, and it was too hard to go through the email saying, I'm being unsubscribed like all the time from you. And so we started a newsletter that pushes out the videos to people to make sure that they get them. I'll put a link down below. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. I'm never going to charge for a newsletter. It's just, there's certain things I can't share, like certain links to news stories I can't share because the AI is watching it and it doesn't share it, push out the video for a reason. I've seen videos do this and go straight because they want to control things. I did a video last night on Chick-fil-A, and it's what it just did following what Tyson Foods did about this antibiotics. That video smoked up like you wouldn't believe. But at a certain point, it falls off. And it's instantaneous. It's not like a curve. It just boom, it flatlines. Well, my point being is when I did the Tyson video, the first Tyson video, and the boycott that's happening, Tyson Foods is actually out there blaming social media. They're not blaming themselves for the facts. Yeah, we just closed down an entire facility and laid off all these people. And yes, we're actively looking for immigrants to come and work for us because they're going to work cheaper for us or whatever. They are blaming social media because the impact that social media has. So I'm going to let you go. I thank you so much to everybody. If you want to sign up for the newsletter and get alerts and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's down below. The link's down below. I hope you all have a great day. The Economic Ninja is out.